The power of volcano rock. Good evening, Rando fans. I'm Space Drake, and I'm joined by Ragnarok in the commentary booth, and Dingwu on restreaming, and Caront on tracking. And we are bringing you another match in the last week of the Final Fantasy Randomizer Spring Tournament 2020. And it is Chaos Week, fans, and you know what that means. Lots and lots of chests.
We got a lovely streaming going on tonight. We got ourselves Zyrak and Avos at it for the not the play-in race, but the last chance
One of these folks will be going on to the last chance qualifier, and one of them is going to be going home after tonight. And so far, for a duckling, Avos has actually put on a pretty good show here. 2 and 3 after 5 weeks means that Avos has had to take down some pretty beefy competition.
Very much so. And as for a duckling, that's a really good start for the spring tournament. And not to question Zyrak's abilities at all either, but both of these have shown some real promise for future coming race and tournaments.
Most certainly. And the racers did not opt to draft this time, with Avos going for a standard fighter rainbow, and Zyrak going for the fighter thief strats. And we will have to see which one of these pays off a bit more in the early game with Zyrak's ability to run away better. Alright, so I believe our runners are ready, and we are pretty much all in place here, so I am going to go ahead and drop the hammer here in 3, 2, 1, and we're going to be off in 10 seconds.
Alright, I can't wait to see this. I've been looking forward to this match for a good minute. I love some good racing.
Alright, and we're off. Or we will be in just a second here, once our racer gets signaled. And here we go. We are off, and Avos heading immediately for the white magic, finding not a whole heck of a lot, just some Cure 2.
Yeah, I saw Harm.
Finding some Fire 2, Quad X, and Zap. That's a pretty decent selection of black magic there. Heavy on the instant kills, but it can still get the job done, especially here in sort of low HP, low magic def early game.
Yeah, and Quad X is going to go a long way for Garland, Astos, and even late game with those Spains. Get them under 300 or less, and it's going to take them out real fast.
Yeah. Ooh, you hate to see it a little bit, but both steel armor and gold is available here. Gold bracelets are available here in Canaria, and they're both at King's Ransom.
Ooh, 41,000 for gold bracelets. Whew. Those must be some top tier gold bracelets.
Yep. Avos going ahead and picking up a little bit of early saving, and Zyrak looking for the initial encounter here, which seems really deep in the encounter table. Holy hell.
Looks like they're going to have a good power cycle run.
Yeah.
Zyrak's doing the same exact thing. They're going to get a level or so before going into base Garland.
Zyrak opting to not take the Quad X off the bat. I'm not sure how I feel about that move. Like, it was kind of expensive, but... And of course, Zyrak loses the fighter in the first combat, while Avos does not. That's going to be a little bit of a swing.
Help out with that early fundage. Yeah, and I'm not sure how I feel about not getting that Quad X too. That's a really powerful spell.
Yeah, I mean, so long as it's not resistant to Death Element and has less than 300 HP, the guides back in the day did a terrible job of explaining this, but it's so long as you meet those requirements, whatever you hit with that spell is going to die. No ifs, ands, or buts.
Very much so.
Magic defense has nothing to do with it. It's just going to die.
And while we were talking about that, AvosRuin picks up a bow ring right out of the first chest over there on the left and toe.
And Zyrak is struggling with these. Do these imps have death touch or something?
I'm not sure. I haven't actually seen that.
Well, he
It
is
might
struggling
be.
to keep his fighter alive, but meanwhile, Avos discovers that the Grey Imps have a massive spell list, and he is just like, I'm not going to deal with that right now.
Going straight for. Avos didn't grab Quad X either.
Mm-hmm. Zyrak seems to be... Oh, he's struggling a little bit with his response rate. Oh, okay. And now we are hopefully going to get underway here.
Zarek, I think, went and purchased. I saw Zap in his repertoire of magic.
Yeah, he has Zap, but he does not have... He did not pick up Quad X yet. Now, I would imagine Avos is going to pick up a lot more of that now that he has some money. Though he's
I'm really hoping he does that too.
Yeah. And he is actually going to do a little bit of encounter manipulation to try and get to those other the other Temple of Fiends chests without running into those huge time-wasting Grey Imps.
Yeah. And the other thing, along with that 1,400 gold, that heal stick, that's going to produce a little bit of extra gold too.
A ruby from the king. That's going to be an interesting pick. And a canoe right off the bat. All right, then.
It's opened up everything in the south.
Yeah, that's both good and bad because we have more options for where to go now, but that also means the canal can be pretty much anywhere that isn't named Melmond.
Pretty much.
You could easily find that canoe in the ice cave or in the volcano at this point, and that's maybe not the best kind of news you want in a seed where you find out that a lot of your early starting armor, or the really good armor early on, is going to be super expensive. We'll still need to see what the situation with the iron armor is, but at least so far it's slightly concerning if you're Avos.
And I saw Zyrak market there. It's fairly decently priced, 1,700.
Mm-hmm. Zyrak making it through the Temple of Fiends himself, as Avos decides to go straight for BK. Not a play I hate at all. This is... Honestly, it's in some ways almost easier to start with BK, especially with the Spring Tournament flags, because the pirates will always be safe, quote unquote. Oh, and we have...
Did you see what I saw in White Magic level 2?
I think I might have missed that, but I'm seeing this Fast and Ice 3 in black.
White Magic has a fade.
Oh dear. That is going to be learnable on both the Red Mage and the White Mage. So Avos is coming out swinging at this point. That is a lot of sweeping on his side, and unfortunately, that is one set. That is one character who can cast that Fade Sweeper that Zyrak is simply not going to have access to. Yep, Avos cleaning up the pirates quite easily.
Very much so. And I'm going to go ahead and bow out. Your buddy MG Weirdo has finally welcomed MG.
Yep. We are joined in the booth by MG Weirdo, who will be helping to commentate this race in which Adamant costs 25,000 gold. Probably not what Avos wanted to see immediately.
Well, I was trying to pick some up from the store and just got lost track of time a little bit. Mm-hmm. Maybe I should even blame the Dengbats for getting in my way, like they were in Zyrax there.
Those Dengbats. Alright, MG, you take over, and I will be back here in the background.
Alright, we appreciate you, Ragnarok, especially stepping in for me like that.
Yeah.
Not a problem, buddy.
Anyway, for all of those who are just joining us, we have a race here between AvosRuin and Zyrak, and both of our runners have just gotten past the Temple of Fiends and gotten a ruby and a canoe for their trouble. And Avos has just cleaned up BK and has discovered the chime off of the pirates, and has now gotten has now robbed a blind woman even more blind.
Yeah, well, that'll be useful when he goes down to visit those money-grubbing elves down in Elfland
Mm-hmm.
and picks up all that magic. And we'll see what they have for us.
Yes, although we know that Pirate Town had Fade at level 2, which Zyrak is not going to be able to make quite as much use of. But we're going to see how much use Avos gets out of it, given that the Arsa Hags are trying to squint him out of existence. That could actually end up unless Avos finds some more ribbons or pro rings, that could also be really obnoxious when it's time to go down to Sea Shrine.
Yeah, well, we'll certainly have a chance to find those pro rings in a shop somewhere along the way. So, no guarantees with all these loose items this week, but we'll probably be able to deal with that. At least it's not something that hits the whole party and just wastes a lot of time.
Mm-hmm. And ooh, we have Warp on level 3 Black Magic alongside Ice 2. That's going to be something Avos is really going to like to see, because that gives him options for diving into Marsh Cave and several other places. And Life 2 is on level 3 and is White Mage learnable.
Yeah, well, White Mage locked even, so Red Wizards won't be able to use it, so certainly makes both of these players taking a Life Cast or a White Mage more useful.
Mm-hmm. However, Life will be available at level 4 to the Red Mage, but Avos not taking it quite at the moment. He's only got about 9,000 smackaroos to spend, so he's considering how exactly he wants to spend all that. He's
and that Black Magic wasn't all that expensive.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised he didn't pick up that Lit 3, but... Okay, and he has nice, fairly cheap chain and iron armor, so he's definitely going to pick that up. Might even pick up that... No, he's not going to go for the Silver Shield.
Yeah, I mean, the chest plate gives you the most amount of absorb out of any of the armor pieces by quite a bit, so certainly a good choice, or a reasonable choice.
And Avos is using some of that money to stock up for what I would imagine is going to be a marsh dive. Since we are still looking for the canal, I actually would be a little tempted to make the marsh dive here, despite having the canoe, because especially in Chaos Flags with 3 loose items, you kind of don't want to get sort of trolled out of the seed by not checking a place with a decent amount of chest density in a place where there could very easily be a logical canal.
Yeah, I guess I wouldn't be so worried about the canal right now, especially having the canoe. We have Ice Cave, which is a guaranteed incentive item. We have the Sages over here. Mm-hmm. And we have all these chests that are in, to me, friendlier dungeons.
Yeah. Well, it sure appears that Avos agrees with you, because he's heading right over to Crescent Lake and is going to see what the Sages have for him, and then I would imagine he is going to swing up towards either Ice or Volcano.
Yeah, like I said, it makes sense. You get a little bit more experience and there's a few more chests. There's a bit more chest density over here. So, and just fewer enemy types, so fewer chances of getting something particularly nasty.
Yeah. And we find a slab on the Confused Old Men. And that could either turn into nothing, or it could be indicative of, especially getting the slab this early, could be indicative of us needing to find the floater in order to complete the seed.
Yeah, but something we won't be able to find out for a while. And it looks like Avos is trying to set up a little bit of a grind here maybe for just cash.
Yeah, but unfortunately he has that incredible hero run right there at the start of the encounter table, which in most cases would be great, but he is a little strapped for cash and probably doesn't feel like taking his chances with the armory just yet. The Volcano armory, that is.
He must really want like a save item or some heal potions before he heads down, That's the only reason to really do that here, rather than going and taking all the boxes and the fights in volcano or ice.
Yeah. Were it me, I probably would just dive straight into the volcano, especially with that nice, long, like easy to manipulate run that you have straight to the to the volcano. You've got 2 casters of Fade, and you don't have a lot of houses yet or anything. But if you need to clear out a couple things, like on the way to uh, to the big massive armory boxes, you can do that easily enough.
Yeah, no, and that would be a very reasonable play to head down there, pick up whatever's in there. Chances are there's a cabin or a house or at least some money in there, some good, good equipment, maybe a loose item. But yeah, that's exploration plus experience at the same time is always, a good thing to do.
He might have, granted, he might have also been looking for that second charge of warp, just to make sure that he can easily get out of the volcano once his initial dive is done. And I don't completely hate that idea, but I still sort of feel like, especially when you know that the overworld has this long straightaway that you need to sort of hack through, it's probably a better play to just, like, grab a single house and dive right in. But Avos does pick up a few more levels, picks up a couple houses, probably going to make an extended trip over to the to the volcano, and is going to give us a look at what these fiend dungeons can do. Avos, so he's still looking for things. Meanwhile,
Yeah.
On the right side here, Zyrak is in Elfland picking up spells for himself, and is going to see that we've got that Life 2 and that Warp and the Lit 3s all available. Going to be armoring up.
Yeah, and we'll see if Zyrak chooses to make the same play as Avos and head east to use the canal, or if he'll head west and either take a marsh. But the other thing that I didn't see that we've checked so far was the dwarf cave. There's still a couple of chests there that are freely available.
Yep. Meanwhile, Avos finally finding what he was probably looking for in those keys. Unfortunately, they have stun touch. And they are also probably... yeah, they're reasonably beefy. I'm not sure I would try to grind these a whole bunch.
Yeah, they're beefy for Pete's, right?
Yeah.
These are an excellent mid-game enemy, but not... they get you... They're good at getting you through that, level 5 to about level 12 or so section, but they're not really an endgame grind, and if they rolled up, then they're not worth your time.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Zyrak finding the true definition of hell there on the river with a pack of 8 Caribs who have a decent chance of casting Mute as their first action. If you want fish that waste your time, look no further.
I thought that's what you did while fishing. You drink beer and you waste time.
Normally, yes, but I would imagine our runners are not so keen on that idea today.
I guess not during a race.
Not with a spot in the last chance qualifier on the line. Anyway, Avos is giving us our first look at the volcano, picks up a cabin, and finds some chimeras. This could be a really good grind tile, depending on how high these chimeras have rolled. Ugh. That's going to be somewhat less good, given that they're deciding to swing pretty hard and have more than 200 HP, it looks like.
Yeah, and they have Glance, which can always make your day not very fun. I mean, they did punch hard against the Black Wizard, who is never
completely
the best
unarmored.
armored character, but...
Yeah. And yeah, Dave was deciding, no, I think as far as these massive centipedes go, we're good. We're K. And meanwhile, Zyrak is also looking for a little bit of money to uh, finance a expedition to the volcano in all likelihood. And Avos not bothering with these Paralisks mostly because there aren't enough of them. And here we go with 4 more Chimeras that hopefully won't start one-shotting people. Yeah, these Chimeras have in excess of 250 HP. These are not really a great option for grinding. And the Black Mage has now been turned to stone, which is probably not the best news for Avos because I'm not sure he has a soft potion. Ooh. Well,
but I like what he did there.
Yeah.
So that was a really subtle move. He reordered his party to where his Black Mage is now in that second slot. That second slot is 2 out of 8 will be melee attacked or targeted 2 out of every 8 times. So that means that his red mage is much less likely to be targeted. Because he's stoned, they'll just be repeated over and over.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, I was gonna say, I wasn't sure about taking this Chimera tile again, given how nasty these things are, and I think Avos is starting to regret his choices in routing here, but the fighter is probably beefy enough to at least like run through the rest of this, since he isn't going to have to deal with too much more. Avos might also be he's assuming kind of a suicide run here. He's mostly going for information at this point and deciding what do I actually really want to pick up, if anything.
Yeah, no. At that point, it was what they have, what the problem with it's going to be. You might as well take the tile, see what's in the box, and do what you can.
And that finds you a canal and also a silver axe for that fighter who has been sort of begging for something to swing, and the silver axe is not a bad choice for that, especially in the early game.
Yeah, it's okay. Most axes aren't very good. They're certainly generally worse than the equivalent sword, but it's certainly better than the fighter trying to punch. And
ooh. Meanwhile, the basic Sahagin have Frost, and they were guarding the rod in the guarded treasure chest in the armory. So that is the first of our loose incentive items, and I'm pretty sure that Avos is going to be happy to see that.
Yep, and just a reminder, if you're new to these seeds, so this is Chaos Week, so there are 3 plus canal loose items. So there are, we formerly had a Fiend Dungeon incentivized this week. That item can be anywhere, so Avos did find that rod, but the canal does not count as a Fiend, or as a loose item. It is in addition to our other items.
Meanwhile, Avos thinking about trying to take that Chimera tile, maybe, do a cheeky little bit of grinding, because in his previous run he did hit level 12 on 3 characters, and that's pretty good. Unfortunately, the Chimeras seem to be a little bit ambush happy, and so he is probably hoping to get some good turnover here, but we will see if that happens.
Yeah, between that and the glands, I really, I would have probably dived deeper to, check out the Agama or tile, or just, you've got what you need out of Volcano for now. Let's head over to Ice, or let's head over to the other continent and check on Sarda and the Titan.
Yep, because you've got access to the Melmund area now, and you've got two incentive items that you can check. But Avos might be thinking that I do have spells and stuff that can kill these chimeras pretty quick if I can actually get turn order. So I understand the temptation, but I do agree that it's sort of a questionable decision.
Yeah, it's risk reward. So this is high risk or relatively high risk for the reward you're getting out of it, in my opinion. But
Yeah.
that doesn't mean it's a wrong play, and if it works for him, and for all I know, he might be a faster runner than I am.
I mean, the upshot is that he is sort of pulling it off now, and that is a lot of levels and a lot of fade charges that he is picking up, and also a lot of warp charges. That might be the other thing. He's thinking about maybe trying to just, like, warp way the heck out of... Yup, he is piecing out of the volcano and is probably going to head to ice and do some warp plays in ice now. I don't entirely hate this, but I'm still sort of wondering how worth it might end up being.
Yeah, well, ice is an incentive location. He's got the levels now to take on ice comfortably. I know people that are comfortable taking on ice at level 6. For me, that's more like 8, 9, 10, and Avos is higher than that, so this is probably a good level to clear out this dungeon and look for that loose, look for that incentive.
Yep, and Avos doing a little bit of encounter manipulation to get a nice run here at the start of this. As meanwhile, Zyrak is on our right side finding the canal and that rod. And we'll have to see if he sticks... Zyrak appears to just be piecing out and is going to probably, I would guess, check Ruby immediately. Like, he has seen that canal and seen that rod and is thinking, alright, I'm going to pretend this is a Caleb seed and go Earth, Earth, Earth. After I get muted by some fish.
Yeah, just some annoying fish in the way, and you're right. He does look like he's either going to save or he's headed out of this area, having found enough to take him out to those other area, to the rest of the world.
Yeah, and meanwhile, in quite contrast to the volcano, and also just sort of to many people's experience with Ice Cave, both in the vanilla game and sometimes in the randomizer, Ice is being pretty gentle to Avos at this point, and he's even able to do kind of a walking grind on the undead and whatnot that is being not terribly difficult and pretty rewarding for him. He's going to be able to pick up a lot of gear and whatnot after he's done it here.
Yeah, and certainly smart to do this with that low-level low-level warp that he has access to, and he's using that Fire 2 at level 1 to do a lot of work and using that vulnerability of the undead against them.
Yeah. Meanwhile, finding just a couple of Wiz Ogres. Wants to throw a Fade over his back, but doesn't even need to. And the trap tiles here in Ice are turning out to largely be garbage, which is kind of unfortunate.
Yeah, there's 2 we didn't check, and I don't think we're going back for them, so not a big deal, but we are through. We did pick up a TNT, so he's going to be rewarded for clearing out this area because he can check that TNT on his way out of the inner sea.
Yes, indeed. And he's only going to have to put up with these stun touch wolves once. Meanwhile, Zyrak going back for, I'm guessing, that adamant. Yes. Alright, so meanwhile, Zyrak is sort of routing the other way. He's thinking, alright, I've got enough. I was looking for adamant money, and now I've got it, and now I'm going to check dwarf. Ooh. And meanwhile, Avos finds a rune sword for his red mage, it looks like, and
that's loose number 2. That was a Thor hammer.
Yes, indeed.
That'll be good for, well, I guess our white wizard, if we ever want to conserve fade casts on, that would be great, and certainly we can have the white wizard swing that if we really need to.
And meanwhile, for now, it's a good way for the fighter to contribute to all these pack fights that we have to do, while not... Ooh! Well, we want to talk about contributing to pack fights, but it turns out the Wraiths were sitting on a big pile of poison, and Avos just got a face full of it.
Yeah, and he had gotten through a bunch of these fights. I think they also have poison touch, so that they are just all kinds of poison today.
Yeah.
But he managed to burn his way through it. So I
And the
guess
bigger
you just
packs
can't
are
trust them.
unrunnable. Ooh. So it turns out that that ice can actually bring the cold in its way. So, that's that's a bit of a razor in a candy apple.
Well, and let me try this one out on you. You can't trust an ice cave in a wraith. Well, ice cave in a smile, something like that.
Fair enough. Meanwhile, Zyrak getting to dwarves via the bridge boss. We're gonna finally get a look at what some of this stuff is. Get a little bit of gold and a cabin, and the bottle. Especially with this, the Thor hammer being loose in ice, that is now telling me that this is almost guaranteed to be a floater required seed, because we have found both of these airship required checks here fairly early in the game logic, and we also find wall and exit at White Magic level 5. Yeah, the early-ish bottle and slab really suggests to me that there has to be at least one of our proper key items locked behind these airship checks. As Avos continues to plunge forward into the ice cave to try and at least salvage that TNT and then probably just get the hell out. I would imagine he is fully sick of this nonsense at this point, and he's thinking even
and
like
there's a
better
couple of chests he'll check on his way out, but not much, just to make sure that there isn't another loose item in here, because he does not want to come back.
Especially with all these like poison wraiths. No, but we're starting to hit the point where I'm almost like, you might want to just come back to this later when you have like a ribbon or something. Like this is just completely miserable.
Yeah, ribbons and levels, a little bit more luck stat, a little bit more agility, so you can avoid these ambushes a little bit, but...
Yeah. And yeah,
Avos is taking off.
Better of it. Yeah, he is just, no, I'm not going to continue to mash my face into this. I'm losing time. Especially as Zyrak is getting through the Rui checks and finds the tail.
And he finds some awesome gear in here, too. He finds a flame armor and a pro cape. So the pro cape will go on one of his wizards, but the flame armor, probably the best armor his fighter can equip until promotion.
Meanwhile, when Avos gets there, the combination of the silver armor and the pro cape is going to make that red wizard really quite tanky. The silver armor is, aside from a gold bracelet and an opal bracelet, pretty much the best armor that a red mage can equip, and it's not awful, to be honest.
To me, it's always pretty mediocre. It's silver armor is the one piece of silver gear that I'm not terribly excited to find.
Yeah.
But
and Sarda has the Oxyales, so the ruby is required, and it has unlocked C for Zyrak. And I'm kind of wondering if Zyrak is now going to be thinking, I've got a ship. From my perspective, there are still 2 loose items. I'm thinking mermaids.
Oh, I think we've got some other places to go before that. I think you go Ordeals, you go Waterfall first.
Mm-hmm.
They're shorter dungeons, they're easier dungeons, and if you're guaranteed to get an item out, it's better to get those out than go chasing a loose.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Avos finds a very black shirt in a volcano that will throw around ice spells whenever he he takes hold of it, and Zyrak is apparently deciding to follow that rod into a check of Earth.
Well, and we'll see how far he dives down here. He might go for the full clear, like you said, but I've also seen a lot of runners just check for loose items and also check the trap tiles on this first floor, really looking for that level grind. And wow.
Yeah. And meanwhile, these frost-chucking Sahagin are just literally all over the place in this sea. Not something you're too fond of seeing.
That is a chilly reception here in Earth for Zyrak.
It certainly is. And as Avos continues to poke his way through the rest of Volcano, and having to do so without some of that otherwise excellent gear that he found in Ice. I imagine he probably isn't completely tilted, but he's not going to be too happy about having to have left some of that stuff behind in Ice, because that Rune Sword can be a really nice pickup for a Red Wizard, especially since a lot of the creatures here, both in Volcano, in Ice, and in some of the upcoming dungeons, all do count as either mages or magical beasts. So you are going to get that plus 10 attack power, or whenever you're swinging that weapon, which turns it into not quite, but pretty darn close to a sort of neutral hitting Ice Blade. Anyway, our runners are continuing to poke through both the Earth Cave and the Volcano, with Avos gearing up to check this Agama tile, and Zyrak deciding to go further into the Ice Cave. And, Avos finds some very bad men, and this could either be a really good grind, or it could be absolutely miserable. It all depends on how high these bad men rolled their HP. And unfortunately, they seem to have rolled sort of high, but not
They're mid-range. It might be worth a level or two, but it looks like Avos has decided against it. They were punching him pretty hard, even with all that gear that he's picked up. We didn't see a spell or a skill out of them, so nothing truly horrible, but probably just not worth his time, is what he's saying.
Yeah. Meanwhile, speaking of spells, we do have Sleep coming out of the Grey Worm, so it's got a spell list, which can be a little concerning. But we get away from that just fine, as Zyrak continues to play around with yet more of these awful Sahagin. And Avos is getting ready to check what would be an incentive tile in a different kind of flag set. Oh, the badmen do have a spell list, and they lead off with Power Word Stun. You don't like seeing that too much.
Of all the things they could have, Stun isn't that bad, but...
This is true, but the main problem is that we are still under 300 HP on a lot of our Light Warriors, and that means that Stun is going to hit them unless they're wearing a ribbon. It is much like Quad X or Power Word Kill, in that if your target has less than 300 HP, the effect is going to go off.
Well, Zyrak being rewarded, although it's a little bit of a delayed reward, for his dive into Earth as he picks up the X-Cal. So that's our first true endgame sword that we've seen so far. So that means we know that his fighter is going to have something to swing in the endgame, and it's in a location that, Avos might very well skip. Just sort of depends on his mindset when he finally makes it to Earth.
Oh yeah, there is a non-zero chance that Avos is trying to go Team Never Earth and is just looking to go mode Earth and avoid, for example, these horrible bat shenanigans. But then Zyrak eventually has to just use a warp to get out of there because it'll be faster.
Yeah, I don't really like that. I think if you step away when the bat's right there at the entrance, you give it a better chance to actually move out of your way than just trying to push it all the way through like he was.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Ava is deciding to sort of teleport out a bit using all those warp charges of his, and noping out of killing Carrie. Probably not feeling too confident even with all those fade charges just yet.
I mean, he's level 14. I guess the only thing he can really be worried about is not having something to really great to swing with the fighter. I mean, the rune sword isn't going to be that good against carry, so he's really
he no longer has it.
It's spell dependence.
Yeah, and Avos, lost the rune sword in any event because that was back in Ice Cave.
Oh, yes, thank you. But then he's still not wielding a reasonable weapon at this point.
Yeah, and you can get through Carry relying just on spells, but Carry has enough MDef that's always kind of a dicey proposition. So Avos is going to go pick up that adamant that has probably also been in the back of his mind for a while, and he's going to find out the information that just the seed is starting to really lean towards, hey, let's find a floater somewhere. And we will see where he goes with that information from there. I do think that Avos is probably going to be thinking, once he sees that, more toward immediately going for both Ordeals and Waterfall, and then depending on if he checks Sarda and gets that Oxyale or not, after Ordeals and Waterfall, he might be thinking Sea. Really looking for that gear to get him over the hump and into a place where he can smash and grab the rest of what's in Ice and Volcano.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised that Avos didn't actually take his fighter down. I would be checking some of these easy weapon shops along the way. If you can grab a silver sword, that's a big upgrade over what you have now. Just to give something, put something in that fighter's hands to do some, make moderate damage with, but do something, help him contribute.
Mm-hmm. Also, I think I may have missed it. I'm not wholly sure if Avos actually picked up that adamant. I would assume he did, but
he did.
All right. He did pick up the adamant, and so we are good. So Avos is going to head in, and he is probably feeling a little bit sour because he knows that in theory he could have single dipped this dwarf check. He knows where the TNT is. He just can't get to it right now. And he almost did. Like, he was on the bottom floor of Ice on his way out when he got accosted by a hooray dwarf.
And the one thing I forgot to mention, I am now obviously cheering for Avos in this match because he gave us the hooray dwarf and Zyrak was too busy and just ran straight on by.
Well, there you go. You know the true measure of a runner by how willing they are to give chat their hoorays.
All right, so Zyrak walks through this really fancy room and trips over the opening. There's a step on the way in, but makes his way down past the rod lock, and we're down into Earth 4. Yep. There's about 8 more chests here to go, and we'll see if any of these are going to pay off for him.
Yep. And meanwhile, he is going to go ahead and check the spec tiles in here. Finds a Great Peed, which is not terrible thing to take, although he's probably not going to stay and grind it at all. Finds a bit of money for his trouble and a bit more money. As Avos is now finding that pro cape and some of that other silver gear, and can now get some armor on pretty much a lot of his folks, and that's going to be a reasonably big swing for him. It doesn't give him protection against that awful poison breath, but it is he does have pretty good protection on 3 of his light warriors against physical attacks now, and he also has anti-death protection on his primary life caster. So yeah, he Avos finds the Oxyale as Zyrak continues to hack up some wizards on floor 4, and I'm gonna be curious to see precisely where Avos goes from here. My gut tells me that we are looking at ordeals into Waterfall into sea on Avos' side, because that seems like a pretty good bit of progression now that you have that information, especially on Avos' side, because he knows that or he's gonna make a fool of me. But Avos does know that that Thor hammer is on the bottom of the ice cave, so there's only one loose item still, and it has an even chance of being either sort of a key item or a quote unquote whammy item, and that means that one of those floater lock checks is probably going to be a key item, and we might need the floater to complete the seed.
Yeah, well, in picking up Tail, that's our 4th non-required item. So, there are the 4. There's the 3 gear items: the Power Bonk, the Thor Hammer, the Opal Bracelet, and then the incentivized Tail. So we found the Thor Hammer now. And we found the Tail. So there are 2 items left. It's still possible not to be floater required,
but the odds aren't great.
Yeah, absolutely.
And meanwhile, Avos is giving us the Hall of Giants check, and these are unique spike tiles that that often contain different encounters from everything else in the rest of Earth. And he is finding some sea snakes and some trolls, and the trolls are not really going to be worth it, because there's only like 2 at a time, and they're basically what you find around Crescent Lake.
I'm not sure if that's the trolls or the trolls plus bulls, which is a little bit more interesting, but still probably not worthwhile.
Yeah. But it was decides that neither one is really super worth his time, especially with his current levels. Yeah, and especially given that with his current levels and current spell charges, he's sitting pretty good for anything not called like Flying Fortress. And meanwhile, Zyrak is engaging a massive pile of glitter on the right side of our screens here.
I've always just thought of this as a curtain. You just brush the curtain aside and walk right through.
Yeah. However, Lich is doing his darndest to not be just a speed bump, and comes out with an Ice 2, and that is fairly painful.
Oh, that's a little taste of vanilla there for us. Fortunately, we're not vanilla speedrun levels.
Mm-hmm. Zyrak busting out the Harm 4. Oh, wow. This Lich really did want to actually try and be a boss, but the fighter was not having too much of it, and at about 45 minutes and 45 seconds, Zyrak lights the first orb of the sea.
Yeah, that Lich had quite a few hit points. He didn't really do a lot of damage or anything to us, but the potential was there. He was casting spells, and you never know where that one nuke is going to land, or at this point, even like an Ice 3 or a Lit 3 would be really dangerous.
Yep, and of course those dark elf mages that you can encounter in the Ice Cave and Flying Fortress have some pretty nasty spells on them, and the evil men in the Flying Fortress do have a nuke that gets sorted into the general spell pool in every seed. So whenever you see a spellcaster, you're always sort of sweating over the possibility of that second turn nuke. Anyway, with the Earth Orb well in hand, and having not found an incentive item, Zyrak is now making its way, looks like back toward the Crescent Lake area, and is going to, I would imagine, get on with those volcano and I was going to say he was going to do his volcano and ice checks now, but it looks like he's
Yeah,
heading
he's
somewhere
headed
else.
up to the northern continent. Just one thing that I was remembering: the first fiends are in a separate pool of their own. So you have 3 pools. There's the first boss pool, the refight and chaos and war mech pool, and then there's the general common enemies pool. So the evil men and the wizards, their spells don't go into that same pool that Lich is pulling from.
Right, but I was just sort of speaking generally. Like whenever you see, say, those gray worms with sleep, you're always wondering at the back of your mind, well, is this going to be sleep into nuke, maybe? But yes, the first fiend fights are in a whole pool of their own, and there are not actually a whole lot of super nasty spells in that particular pool. The real nasty stuff mostly comes off of Tiamat, who gets every powerful breath weapon in the entire game.
Right, and so Zyrak is over here. He has made his way up to Onrak, and we get to see, is he going to dive sea like you were calling for, Space Drake, or is he going to head up to Waterfall? And
well, I when you brought it up, I was going to say the Waterfall into sea play would make a little bit more sense here, but I do think there is a certain kind of siren allure, like no pun intended with the mermaids and all. But there is
oh, come on! If you have a beautiful pun like that, intend it, feel it, let it flow.
Well, either way, because Zyrak doesn't know about that loose Thor hammer, and from his perspective, there are 2 loose items still in this Chaos Seed. Mermaids is probably, aside from certain sections of the Flying Fortress, the highest chest density and the most easily accessible, especially with all these fades and lit 3s he has. The most accessible pack of chests in the whole game. So he is probably thinking, that is a particularly easy check to make, and if I make that relatively quickly and my opponent doesn't, I might have a pretty big leg up, especially since it's starting to look like I might need that floater.
Well, I don't think anybody's ever going to skip these chests here in Waterfall, right? With the
sure.
robot, the incentive item, you're going here, and and for talking to a lot of runners, it's almost like you chase in known incentive locations, and you clear out the pot for the possible loose along the way, because you never know if you need the loose or not, and so that's one of those things at the very end.
Well,
now
we were talking about enemies potentially getting really nasty spells, and Zyrak discovers that the red dragons have traded out their normal fire breath for fire 3.
So and that's a shame.
Down most of it. Go ahead.
Well, he gets a katana, which is good for him, but he doesn't find out whether Waterfall is immediately useful or not, and he's lost all of his warp casters. All he has to do is make it through that fight once, and with one of those I guess his only warp caster alive, and then he doesn't have to see those awful red dragons with their appropriate Fire 3 breath again.
Yeah, but Zyrak is going to finish his check of what all is here in the Waterfall and finds a light axe, which is sort of a slightly better silver sword in terms of swinging it, and also allows you to cast Harm 2 for free whenever you use it as an item. So I don't think he's gonna hate seeing that too much. I'm surprised he didn't equip it on his fighter though. Oh, and these red dragons are ambush happy.
but he makes it out, and so he is going to try to walk all this gear out. So this is a risk. I honestly, if I was in his case, I would have checked it, reset, and run back in, but this might pay off for him. It might save him an extra minute or two.
Mm-hmm. I kind of like this play because he does have the ice armor on the fighter, so he is fireproof, more or less, and he could be reasonably confident about getting through those dragons, and then the rest of this stuff, he has enough armor that it's not that much of a threat, since he's wearing steel equivalent body armor, and he has a bunch of secondary armor pieces, and
it's not so much the damage that I worry about here, it's things like this, where you have these packs of enemies, he can't clear them, and that fighter is, if not the worst, he's almost the worst character in running from fights, and it's just, you're going to spend a lot of time. And I'm less worried about survivability and more worried about time.
That's fair. That's another reason I was surprised he didn't take the light axe on the fighter, because that would give him a way to clear out these mummy packs. But he does get away and doesn't see what else might be lurking behind those first two spells or so of the now appropriately named for once wizard mummies.
Well, and there aren't that many of those wizard mummies in the pack, so it's not that tough. But while Zyrak's making his way through Waterfall, Avos has made his way all the way down through Earth Cave and is about to have his, I guess it's more like a purple drywall than a actual curtain. It just takes a little bit of effort to knock your way through.
Yep. And meanwhile, Avos is making Dingwu very, very happy. However, the Ding strats do not pay off this time, sadly.
Yet.
Or will they?
There's still a chance. Oh.
But Fade will probably get the job done. And it does.
He didn't want his cake, so he just had to go.
The fighter on Avos' side, Dingwu, I believe that fighter is using a silver axe. On Zyrak, Zyrak is currently using a silver sword, which is why I was commenting that I'm surprised that Zyrak didn't equip the light axe on there, because the light axe is just a straight upgrade to a silver sword. It has as much hit percentage and has 5 more attack power, and also allows you to cast Harm 2 for free. The light axe, especially if you find it fairly early, is a very good weapon. Ooh! Ooh, you don't want to see that too often. That's a Nacho that leads off with Quad X. Zyrak is a bit lucky he was above 300 HP.
And Avos manages to remember to translate his slab, learns all one word of the Lefanish language.
Lupa.
And we'll see where he heads next. He's certainly headed south. Is it Ordeals? Is it Waterfall? And this looks more like an Ordeals play.
I'm not too surprised by this. Like I've been sort of harping on, Avos knows that there's like only one loose incentive item left, and there are a lot of indications that at least one of these these floater locked incentive checks is going to be required to beat the game. So he is going to be pounding away at the rest of the incentive checks, looking for that floater for what is probably the rest of his go mode.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I was sort of wondering at the route he was taking, and this explains it. He wanted to restock on potions and cabins, and so he used this south dock of Elfland to be able to do so before he heads on down.
And Ragnarok, I haven't wanted to give voice to that possibility and thus completely doom our runners via Caster's Curse. But ever since I saw that TNT, that idea has been on my mind. The idea that TNT might be locking the floater. And that would be...
Waterfall paid off, or sorry, Mermaids pays off with that loose crystal.
There we go. That is... We know that is loose item number 3, and that is loose item number 2 for Zyrak. So he is looking for one more, and that crystal can also turn into the floater. So depending on how some of these next checks go, one or the other of these runners could be in a major position of advantage.
Yeah, Avos has a little bit of levels and certainly a bit of knowledge, but Zyrek's got a little different knowledge and a dungeon or so. So I would say Zyrek's ahead a little bit, but it'll still depend on who picks what and yeah. What's behind all these fetch items that we have.
Meanwhile, Zyrak finding the Aegis Shield, which will be protection against that nasty poison breath in the ice cave if that TNT turns out to be something that we need to get. But the game is still being pretty stingy with the ribbons here.
Well, and just remember that he's also got to get Floater and Promote before he can hold that Aegis Shield. So if
for sure.
TNT is the Floater, then he's going to have to get that without the benefit of that protection.
Oh, certainly. I was mostly trying to lead in to the fact that we have not really found much of anything in the way of ribbons so far, which is not something that Avos in particular wants to see, because I think one of his side objectives is find some way of surviving that freaking ice cave so that he can check what that TNT is. I'm certain that is almost like preying on his mind at this point. He knows that there's a fetch quest item in there, and that could easily be leading to progression.
It could also easily be, nothing needed. And so he's just going to clear out and keep doing his incentives. He gets rewarded a little bit with a mage staff and a, slightly inferior katana.
Mm-hmm. And, Kenny Star, the Ice Cave holds both the TNT and our one of our loose items, which is a Thor hammer, and it is guarded, among other things, by wraiths who like to spam poison breath.
Yeah, or damage poison, whichever you prefer to call it, but they are a very common encounter, so that they have rolled up in the encounter rarity, and that pack has been you can't escape it. Even with having warp, we have to make it through.
Mm-hmm.
One thing Avos might think about is going back in there with some level 5 charges, so he can use warp to get the TNT, and then you could exit out. That would at least save him some of the chances of finding those guys.
Yeah, I thought he might be thinking about doing that too, but he after a couple of those wipes where he couldn't even get back to the TNT, I'm not surprised that he just decided to piece out of there for a while. But he has gotten the crown out of a castle of ordeals, which Zyrak is also coming up hard on, and meanwhile Avos is heading to check Waterfall, and then we'll have to see if he makes that same upper sea check. It's still... actually, I'm not sure that the Avos will, because he knows now that there aren't going to be any loose incentive items in Mermaids, so he might skip Mermaids entirely.
Well, no, the crystal is in Mermaids, so he can't have found... Right, he's still missing that one loose item.
Yes. So he might make that check, and we'll discover it, and then we'll know that, oh hey, I know where all 3 of the loose items are. And then that's where things get a bit interesting, because that could change the various things that he checks, including that potential Excalibur in Earth Cave that Zyrak will be able to use on promotion.
Yeah, and Avos did pick up that Excal as well, and we'll see if Avos can make it through those red dragons with a little bit more luck than Zyrak had, and manage to escape and cut off that extra minute or two of walking out with just the fighter.
Alright, well, we are coming up on those pretty nasty dragons on Avos' side as Zyrak continues to hack his way through the castle of ordeals, finding a pretty good amount of HP for EXP on his way as he searches. And on that note, I'm a little surprised that neither of our runners has killed anybody off for experience bonuses. I can understand it more on Avos' side because he has pretty much everyone on his team is doing at least like something meaningful. He has two.
Blue.
He has two casters of.
Yeah, two Fade casters, and then the Black Wizard has enough different sweepers to come through. And I think this means he's going to be able to get out pretty easily.
Yeah, and but meanwhile, Zyrak, has a thief for running, but at this point, that's starting to get a little bit less valuable, especially with all the sweeping we have, and with the fact that we still haven't found the floater and a means to promote yet. So that's sucking up a little bit of EXP that could be going into our two sweeper casters and our tank.
Yeah, well, it's not bad. We have all these fetch quests to take care of, and these runners, they know what they need to do. They'll take some time and they'll work that out. So we did want to take a second here. We were a little over an hour in, and we want to just make sure we reintroduce ourselves and our crew. I am MG Weirdo, and with me is...
And also in the booth is Space Drake, and we are joined by Karant on tracking and Dingwu on restreaming, and we are bringing you the Final Fantasy Randomizer's Spring Tournament 2020 Swiss round, and specifically Chaos Week.
Yep, this is week 6 of the tournament, and this is the week that determines your final seeds. We have these two runners here at 2 and 3 that are playing for that 3 and 3 record and the last chance qualifier. Immediately after this race, we have a great one. We have Spellzap and Hypes Nova, who are playing for the winner will get to go straight into the play-in race for the brackets, where the loser ends up at 3 and 3 and will end up in that last chance qualifier. So there's a lot on the line, and two stalwarts of our community, fantastic runners. So stick around after this to check that out.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be an absolute slobber knocker. Like, I especially know that Spellzap was not expecting to be in the position that he is in now, and that's so that is going to be just two runners sort of fighting for their lives and getting ready to go blazing out of the Swiss in a better position.
Yeah, no, I agree. Spellzap was an early favorite in this tournament. He still could be, but they're both good runners, and it'll be a great match. Zyrak making an interesting play here. I would not have expected this, but coming in to clear out Mirage, and he finds some great gear. He finds Moon and the Dragon Armor, but is still holding well, he doesn't have the cube to go up into the sky to clear this, and he's still holding on to these fetch items that he hasn't turned in yet. So that's kind of, I'm holding my breath, waiting to see if we actually have all the items we need, or if that TNT from ice is going to be required. And
Meanwhile, I believe Avos is heading down into lower sea first. He has not checked the mermaids and has not found that crystal. I don't entirely hate this, but because it's pretty quick to go get the kill on Kraken and, you know, roll the dice, as it turns out, first. But especially with Avos's gear situation, I would have thought that he would be a bit eager to go fishing for a little bit more, like, armor, especially, before going on to face the big squid.
well, a lot of the more experienced runners, what you'll do, and what you'll see especially in Sea Shrine when they're looking for a loose item, is they'll go left side, clear it out, because you're checking chests anyway, so you might as well check them on the way. If you find your loose item going that way, then you don't have to go to mermaids and spend all of that time.
Right.
You can avoid the ghosts and all that mess. And you see how tough Kraken is. If most of the time, by the time he's level 17, level 18. By the time he gets down there, Kraken is not likely to be a big problem for him. Where mermaids is always going to be a time sink, and a chest is a chest, a box is a box. They're all equally likely to have your loose item as long as you can get to them.
Meanwhile, I believe that Zyrak actually found our first ribbon there in the Mirage Tower, alongside the Masamune and the Dragon Armor. Unless I was a little bit.
No, yep.
There's a lot going on here right now. Our runners are making some plays.
Well, and when they're both doing different things, it's fantastic, but it keeps us on our toes, and that's why we have Ragnarok and Kurant there helping us keep track of it.
Anyway, Avon's not finding too much here in lower sea.
Well, if you wanted a grind tile for experience, then that zombie dragon tile looked like it was great. They were a little over 200 health, which is fairly low for them, and he could really blow them apart, but these lobsters with trance, having a party.
And there's something else here with sleep. That's a good pack for wasting a whole lot of your time, at least. Meanwhile, Zyrak cuts a kindly old king in half, and it turns out that that Astos had our pearlescent Cheerio. So that is really good armor for that white mage, but that does mean that we are kind of running out of places for that floater to be. And it also means
we still have crystal, herb, and TNT. But
it also means that it is looking.
Checks.
It also means that it is looking very, very likely that that this is in fact a floater-locked sea. Meanwhile, these whiz vampires are not messing around here too much.
Yeah, and Avos returning the favor, burning one of its level 5 nuke charges.
And there we go. The herb turns into the floater, which means that the waterfall is our ticket to the sky, and thus completing the rest of the seed.
Yeah, and we do know for sure that floater is required at this point, because we found 3 of our 4 possible non-required items. So that means there can only be 1 that's either in Lefane or in Gaia. So we're stuck with needing that. Now the question is, do you need to go to ice at all?
Yeah, that's a real question. Does that TNT turn into one of our key items, or does it turn it into the power bulk?
Yeah, something you want, but if it's going to take you 5, 8, 10 minutes to get, it might not be worthwhile.
Mm-hmm. Whereas that TNT, though, can very easily turn into either the key or the loot, because there are very few places that the key and the loot cannot logically be. And meanwhile, Avos is just being given the business by these trance lobsters, and they're also unrunnable, so he has to not only get the... Oh my goodness! Oh, the lobsters also have toxic! Oh, you do not want to see that, ever. That is harsh.
Between the dance party and the toxic, they managed to leave the one character he needed alive to save this run. He's got that white mage with those life 2 casts, and he is going to book it for Kraken now. He wants nothing to do with that party.
Mm-hmm. Hashtag never lobsters. I am now quite solidly in the anti-lobster camp. Meanwhile, it was showing us what he thinks of the water elementals. I can't say I completely disagree.
Well, and just to make sure everyone out there knows, so Avos has embraced our Monte Chaos's casino theme. His water and air elementals are dice, while his fire and water elementals have been turned into poker chips.
Here we go, getting our first look at Kraken. We have enough nukes to... Oh, alright.
Yeah, the nuke hits for 305, which is a pretty good hit. The fast goes off to get turn order. Fighter hits for 202 and puts away the Squiddy. So we have a second orb lit, and Avos with that takes the orb lead. Although Zyrak still has a massive lead in terms of key items and is about to turn in his floater.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, and Avos, this is a big important play, like you were saying.
Yeah, he is not gonna check upper the upper sea shrine, and this could be really perilous at this point. I mean, Zyrak has that crystal ball in hand, and you know, if the crystal turns into anything important, then like Avos is going to be at a major disadvantage. Meanwhile, Zyrak kind of forgetting exactly where all of the holes in Cardia lead.
Yeah, I mean, especially learning the map for this game. The overworld map, especially once you have the floater, is a little challenging to get around with at first. It's no shame to, you know, have us hit B select and, you know, show us the map and let us see exactly where you are.
Oh yeah. And meanwhile, Avos finds that that floater and realizes, you know, what the rest of the seed logic has to look like.
Yeah, and he made a really smart play. So he docked at the southern end of Elfland.
Mm-hmm.
I can understand why Zyrak docked at the northern end, having the crystal, but I probably would have gone and turned in the crystal on my way to Cardia to get promotion.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those, like, it's on the route things,
mm-hmm.
But he went the other way. But Ava saved some time there getting from Elfland to his floater.
Yep, and looks like he is going to... Yes,
he's going to promote first as well.
Yeah, Avos is immediately heading over to promote. I'm not surprised, especially with like the black shirt and all of those spells available to the red mage in hand.
Yeah, and we have some gear. Zyrek has a little bit more gear, but we'll see how that works when Avos makes his way through Mirage.
Oh yeah, and
then
at this point, Zyrak has the fake ribbon special equipped on the knight there. The Aegis shield, the dragon armor, and the pro ring, giving him resistance to 5 different elements.
yeah, the field expedient knight ribbon equivalent.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, Avos checking Cardia. This has been he's still looking for a loose, which makes this a reasonable play.
Yeah.
If he didn't need a loose and was just checking for gear, then I would have not have liked this play at all. It's like go chase down Gaia, go chase down Lefane, find out if you're in go mode or not. But he's still 1 item short.
Mm-hmm. And we know that the item that he's looking for is lurking among the mermaids. Meanwhile, Zyrak is still sort of fishing for a bit of gear, and I'm a bit shocked by that, given that he is pretty much as good as you're going to get, aside from a power bonk on that knight, and pretty close to it on that ninja too.
Yeah, I guess the one big thing, and this is something I had to check our tracker notes on, we have seen fast, but we have not seen temper.
We have not. And the crystal eye turns into the power bonk. So that means that both of those flutterlock checks are absolutely going to turn into the items we need to beat the game, as well as the TNT.
Yep, we are 100% going to need the TNT, because that will turn into the third of our key, loot, and cube, our 3 required items remaining.
Mm-hmm.
And we see these runners just finish up all these fetch quests, going back and forth, zigging back and forth, and crisscrossing their paths. And then Zyrak is kind of done with his fetch quests unless he goes up to Gaia and Lefane, and what do you know, that's the direction he's flying.
Yep. And as Ragnarok points out, skipping the crystal has technically not come back to haunt Avos too much. There is one problem here, though. Not finding the crystal means that he is still looking for that last loose item, and he is going to be thinking about the loose item up until the point he actually gets his hands on the key, the loot, and the cube. And we're gonna have to see if he beelines all of these fetch quests before taking another dungeon dive and maybe looking for that last loose item.
You 100% do your loose items first, or your fetch quest items first. You've got to check that to see what you need, and then it comes down to a call. Are you going to spend a lot of time checking all these chests for a loose item, or are you going to try to bang your head against ice again with these extra levels, with this extra gear?
Mm-hmm.
And Avos picks none of the above. He's in the area, he's going to go knock out Carrie. He's already checked every chest in this dungeon that could have anything, so he's just going to beeline straight for the Fiend and light his third orb.
I don't hate this. You were in the area anyway in order to fill out your magic with some of that level 6 stuff that you wanted, and so you have enough levels in gear that doing it now versus doing this a little bit later isn't going to make that much of a difference, because carry 1 usually isn't that scary. So you might as well just get it out of the way now and make it part of what is hopefully a bit of an efficient routing.
Yeah, I mean, this dungeon, you've checked literally every chest in it. You're gonna go mode it no matter when you do it, so it's not gonna take you any longer. So you're saving a few seconds of overworld flight time, and giving yourself time to think.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be a big difference when you're running these flags like this, where you're thinking, okay, how many loose items have I picked up? And it depends on whether you're taking notes You kind of can't run this race with a tracker like we have, so or at least we don't have, or they don't have an extra person running the tracker for them. So sometimes you need that minute to figure out, what am I going to do next? Where do I want to go? What do I have? What have I not done?
And meanwhile, Zyrak does find the cube there in Lefane.
Yeah, and is beating up the Tyros on his way back, so definitely team stake.
And also
right
found
now.
a key in the from the bottle fairy, so we now know that it has to be TNT into the loot. And so
yeah,
that's going to raise the question, because we have to keep in mind, though, that that Zyrak has not been to Ice yet, and does not know where that last loose item is on his side. So he doesn't yet know that the ice incentive item is going to lead to the loot. So, and he now has all of Sky open to him. Is he maybe going to think about Sky?
Well, he did Mirage already, but what it looks like he's doing here is he's going to do his key lock checks, which is a reasonable play given what he knows, and I mean, he's just trying to avoid ice. We know how bad it is, but he does not.
He does get a white shirt for his trouble, but that doesn't help him a whole lot right now. Oh, and Avos is once again
game, but
beating his head against this horrible ice cave, and decides, no, I'm still not going to do it. I need like ribbons or something, and we know that he's going to find his solution there in Mirage Tower, but
we'll have to see how far Zyrak makes it his first dive before he runs into this nastiness.
Yeah. Zyrak is in a much better position, because now he does have that Aegis shield as part of his assembled semi-ribbon kit, as well as an actual ribbon, so the poison breath will not be nearly as scary for him.
Well, he gets a small pack this first time and gets to run away, and that's actually one of our big differences between the parties, is that Red Wizard for that thief, the Red Wizard will blast through, but the thief gives you that chance to run away, to avoid ambushes if you move him around a little bit. Of course, if you don't know it's bad, then you might not move him up yet.
Oh, for sure.
So I definitely like these checks, but I'm not sure that I like doing ice once. Then again, I guess Avos is trying to manage his frustration level.
Yeah. And meanwhile, Zyrak finds the TNT, realizes that this is at least a coin flip of being go mode, and is going to check it immediately. And
uses that exit to get out.
And guess what, Zyrak? You were correct. You are now in go mode at 125.34.
Yeah, and now we have to see, can Avos make it through ice and get his TNT, or at least find his last loose item before Zyrak catches up by clearing 2 more Fiend dungeons.
Indeed, like all those wipes to those poison rates really cost Avos, whereas Zyrak barely even saw the poison breath. It's one of those curses of Rando that can sort of be informed in part by the routing decisions you make. Zyrak just didn't do ice early, and so didn't really run into the wraiths as much, and so didn't see that poison breath.
Avos finds his Massa and puts it on the Red Wizard, so he's got 2 characters that can swing, leaving the X-Cal... Oh, drops the Flame Armor, not a fan... I keep mixing up which party is which, and so which armor can be used by which side.
Avos found the Dragon Armor, which made all other armors for his his knight completely worthless.
Oh, yes. No, I agree with that. It's the what other characters in your party can use the hand-me-downs.
Yeah. The ninja can use a whole lot of hand-me-downs, and the red wizard can use substantially fewer.
Right, and I was thinking for a second he had the ninja, which is like, why did you throw away that flame armor where you can just pass it on? But with the red wizard, I don't believe he's allowed to use that.
No. Meanwhile, Avos is going to find the rest of his nuts to special attacks package here in Mirage, and he's going to continue on and beat up a 5-headed dragon.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is one advantage of Avos' routing is that he's gotten the cube before he came here, so he's not going to have to double dip. Although he is likely to keep checking chests all the way up.
Yeah, he's going to lose some time checking a lot of chests for an incentive item that is just not there and is not something he would really want in any event.
Well, and he's level 22, so he still needs 3, 4, 5 levels before he wants to enter the Temple of Fiends. You can get away with it even at this level, but it just sort of depends on your party and how all those fiends roll.
Meanwhile, Zyrak is beating up some very bad men, I think for the purpose of catching up in levels himself, because he was actually still in the teens when he first came into the volcano, and these bad men are pretty squishy when you consider that that you've got plenty of casts of Fade and Ice 3 and Nuke available at this point.
Yeah, the only real issue for Avos when he found these bad men packs was that he didn't have a lot of armor across his party, so he was taking a lot of damage per hit from them, whereas Zyrak's already gotten that armor, so now he's in good shape.
Yeah, and the bad men being a enemy native to the Flying Fortress complex, by default have a pretty high attack value, and even if they low roll, like they will still mess up low level lightly armored light warriors, and if they roll high, then God help you.
Yeah, and so Avos, I love that Avos and Zyrak are fighting the same encounters this late in the seed, although it's in different dungeons. Avos just trying to walk through to check all these chests, still looking for that loose item, and, picking up experience along the way. I mean, this is why I'm a founding member of Team Sky, is that it's not the chests, it's not the experience, it's the combination. Once you get to Sky 2, all the encounters are pretty good experience, and it's the walking grind. You're getting your checks and your experience at the same time. You don't have to stop for one or the other.
The only problem being, of course, that if some of those sky monsters roll high, if you try to do that too early, it can get real spooky. But it is still very, very worth it.
No, it's still worth it. Come in here, level 10, level 6, level 3, whatever. Just come on in. The water's fine. Just
It's fine.
Just ignore the sharks with laser beams.
It's fine. Meanwhile, speaking of the grind, Avos is now sort of rounding the corner on level 23, as Zyrak engages Carrie in what is almost certainly going to be a very, very short fight.
Yeah, we know that Carrie hits pretty hard, but didn't have a lot of health. He's already done 400 damage, hits again for 276, and is through.
Zyrak has the Masa and a katana for his ninja. He is not going to check a single chest for any more gear. He is he is ready to just hit the jets and go as fast as he possibly can.
Yeah, it looks like he's going to do air before sea and head it up, and we'll be chasing Avos's heels, and we'll see who makes it out of here first.
I would imagine that Zyrak is going to make it out of air first, just because he is, as I like to say, he is throwing on the Eurobeat and just drifting through the corners. You know, he is not going to stop for anything that isn't a nice, experience-rich pack that he can easily clear out, like a trio of speed bumps. Beyond that,
still, the bad men are unrunnable, so there's a lot of, there's the cops standing there that'll go, you got, or maybe it's not the cops, but it's the drawbridge, and you got to wait for the train to go by, and then you just keep on going.
Yep, meanwhile, Ava's finding sort of the bad end of the encounter table here with and ending up like hip deep in manticores for his trouble. But he is closing in on another one of those big caches of items in Sky 3. Boy, he is finding it, though.
Yeah, this is a uneven encounter table where he's getting an encounter every other step, it seems like.
Mm-hmm. That's the price you pay for that easy run that there at the power cycle. Both of our runners now just working their way through the piles of angry cats and bad men. And of course, it was finding some loot, but none of it's really all that relevant. I do like the use of warp to get around the dungeon a little bit faster. This is a little bit of heads up play, and it's especially since warp is on a spell level that we aren't too concerned about currently, because that's not where our biggest sweepers are. Meanwhile,
it's Ice 2, which is just it was great in the early game, but not so much anymore.
Yeah, and of course, Avos has still come up a little bit short on ribbons, but now has a ton of pro rings, so his casters are not too worried about physical attacks at this point, and he basically no longer has to worry about the death element at all.
Yeah, and he's checking his last couple of areas here, while Zyrak passed him in the corners, just beautiful drift right past, picked up a second ribbon in the greed chest on Sky 3, and is making his way through the teleporter maze and onto the Bridge of Destiny, where we need to pray for our Lord and Savior, the robot chicken, Warmech.
Yeah, let's get some bless RNGs out there, Chad. We need to say hello to Robot Friend.
I always like thinking of him as ED209 from RoboCop, but
Also
I guess he could also be a Marauder.
Robot Friend is many things to many people.
And he is always a friend that you want to see. So
Oh, yes.
Avos does pick up that second ribbon as well, so
he is going to be very happy to see that, although it's not as necessary as he might actually think it is at the moment.
Well, it's still going to make a big difference on how quickly he can get through ice. Just being able to defend one extra character, that's a few more chances at casting that sweeper to get through.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think Zyrak's hitting that bad stretch of the encounter table here, running into a lot of errors. He's running away from them, and they just keep blowing down the bridge and catching up to him. So we might see double fiend fights here.
We might just at that. And then Avos is going to be completely done with fiends, and we'll just have to go through through ice again, while Zyrak is going to have to hack his way through all that nonsense, and especially those lobsters that are stalking around on the lower floors of sea.
And Tiamat, bringing the pain, she's got armor today. So Masa 4 hits for 4 damage, the Katana 4 hits for 50 damage, including a crit. So Zyrak is using Power Bonk and White Shirt, trying to actually buff up now because, well, Tiamat's hard to damage, but she didn't hit very hard. She hit the Black Wizard for 13.
Yep. And
although that is with the
Fog
2 cast earlier.
That is going to be another factor for this, because Avos does not have a power bonk. Avos has never found that crystal line.
Yeah, but both of these runners have that Bane Sword. I am not a big Bane Sword, Brack Strats kind of person, but this is a place where I would use it. Although Zyrak gets just after one bonk, gets that hit with the Masa for 600 damage, knocks out Tiamat 1, lights his third orb, so we are now even in orbs.
Yep. Meanwhile, Avos is going more for a pure caster strat, which I don't entirely dislike here.
Well, especially with his party. He's got Fades, he's got Nuke, he goes with Brack, tries to, Brack, but no pizzas for us yet.
It's not the worst play in the world, I don't think, especially...
Well, it's a reasonable chance to hit, and with you've got all these Fades and all these Nukes, you got a chance to just knock through here.
Yep. Okay, and Zyrak doing a little bit of additional spell pickups on the way to Sea Shrine, and at 138.50 or so, AvosRuin has lit all 4 orbs and is just looking for the loot now. I would imagine he is, with 2 ribbons in hand and an Aegis shield, he is heading right back to the ice cave in order to get his revenge.
Yeah, this is his nemesis, this seed. He's been in there 6 or 7 times. He almost made it all the way through on his first trip, found our 3rd loose item, but wiped to those Wraiths on the way out. These fortunately are Eye Mages and not Wraiths, but he's like, okay, it's gotta be this, because if it's not this, then I've already lost.
Mm-hmm. And then it's the loose loot, and I am just completely smoked.
Yeah, he's done a good job of full clearing the sections of dungeons that he's done, or the entire dungeon, but he's still got, as we said, mermaids, and he's got ice. Actually, is that? I think that's it. Actually, that's all he has left to check in the game.
Yep.
Oh, and key-locked.
Yeah, he has not checked key-locked. He has not checked marsh. He has not checked mermaids, and he has not checked the last few chests here in ice. But
there was one of those dungeons you mentioned in there. We don't talk about that dungeon. It doesn't exist. Even if you're in a Caleb seed, it still doesn't exist.
Fair dues. All right, and the ribbon's paying off, and the
did the ghosts just knock out Zyrak? Did the ghosts, in addition to their punch, are they nuclear ghosts?
I might have missed that. I was so focused on Avos about to pick up that TNT that I missed that.
They punched Nuke. Nuke is his character name, and it's just doing normal ghost things.
Okay.
No, his characters aren't named Nuke, so maybe he casted Nuke.
No,
but there was a nuke, and then he reset, so... well, I'll keep an eye on it.
Mm-hmm. Either way, Zyrak back in it as Avos makes these last couple of item checks in ice, just in case. He's probably been thinking about this for the past, hour. wondering if his progression is behind a bunch of jerk-face poison rates.
And you know what? I think this is going to be a close one. We are going to have a great seed here because Avos only has a little bit more to check. Zyrak is on his down to a Kraken that we know was not horribly challenging. Well, he should have taken a left there, and then he does.
Mm-hmm. Zyrak getting a little bit lost here at the bottom sea and finding those lobsters. Wait. However, he does have enough ribbons and whatnot that this isn't going to be as nasty as it was when Avos came through here.
It's still a huge waste of time.
Oh yeah, it is still a gigantic time sink, and
so Avos picks up his TNT, is headed over to the dwarves to turn that in. And then we'll see if he's going to go hunt down that power bonk, or if he's going to make a Temple of Fiends Revisited dive without it. I would go without.
He has temper. I think he is just going to see that loot, realize like what was being locked in ice, and is just going to pour on the as soon as he checks this, for last few potential items, he is going to hit the nitro.
Yeah, and I mean that temper is level 7, so he doesn't have a lot of charges of it, but he's got enough, and for like Tiamat 2, for like one gatekeeper or one really bad chaos, and that's probably enough to be worth a shot.
Meanwhile, even the ribbon wearers were unable to resist the groove on Zyrak's side, and he was stunned fully for a turn.
And
so
Avos celebrates, so he's getting into the action, but he just celebrates for a minute and ducks back out.
Yeah, but Zyrak is now pretty much stuck against these awful toxic stun lobsters, and is going to have to fade his way out to even make any progress. And he gets through happily, but that was a big time loss. And I'm a little surprised that Avos is making the rest of these checks at all. I kind of would have thought that he would be going straight for Temple of Fiends.
Yeah, he's got a couple of spells. Definitely needed to pick up life on that night. That can be a run saver for sure.
Yeah, I believe since that was level 4,
oh wait, no,
life
that's level
was
4.
on.
Yeah,
that was on the Red Wizard though. That was still Red Wizard learnable.
Yeah, it was the right slot, but the wrong shop in town.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Avos is just taking stock. Do I have everything I need? The answer is yes, and we are probably going to pick up a... Okay, I don't agree with this play. Like, you have the gear you need to do Temple of Fiends. Like, once you get that loot, you just go for it.
I mean, there's two things that if you're looking for something, it's that loose that you know is going to turn into the power bonk, and the defense sword. Mm-hmm. And that's it. And you don't need either of those two. You're level 25, you'll be 28-ish by the time you get all the way down, which is pretty good levels. Maybe you go grind an extra level or two without having the power bonk, but you're right there. Yeah, just take an info dive and see how it turns out.
Yeah, and by the way, Dingwu did confirm for us that yes, Ghosts had nuke first spell. So Avos got very lucky in not seeing that at all.
Hey, anytime you can avoid the ghosts entirely, those guys creep me out. You know, but AvosRuin does enter the Temple of Fiends Revisited 1 hour, 46 minutes, and 22 seconds. And Zyrak lights his 4th orb, takes care of Kraken, so he's only got a little bit of shopping to do, and he'll be in there 2 minutes behind, maybe?
Yep, we absolutely, especially depending on what the Fiends have and what these monsters might have, we've got a race, folks.
Yeah, Zyrax gotta hope one of these fiends is a little bit tougher defensively, that Avos is gonna be slowed down by it, and that, of course, Avos is hoping he can make it through in one shot.
Yep, it is just pretty much a drag race at this point. Both of our runners pouring it on as fast as they possibly can, because especially at 147, you know that either Topher is a little bit nasty or you are at best like hot on the heels of the other racer.
Yeah, well, in both of these runners, I think have reasons to believe that they're behind. Avos certainly with all of his ice wipes, and then Zyrak getting all those extra items. I mean, I guess they both did ordeals, which turned into the crown, which was not all that useful. It's, and they both have things that they could have skipped easily, and you could imagine the other player getting lucky and not running into that.
Yeah, specifically, I would imagine that both of our runners at this point are thinking, did the other guy galaxy brain into like doing that herb check as early as possible? Did the other runner have a really hard time in ice or somewhere else? Like, am I super behind? You're just looking at you're even as you're playing, you're side-eyeing the IRC channel, like wondering if that done from the other player is going to come in at any second.
Oh, wrong way, Zyrak. Wrong way.
Yeah, and,
wrong corner. Okay,
Zyrax,
taking the long way home, but he's going to get there.
Yep, Zyrax, slight unfamiliarity with the map coming into play here, and yeah, the route through Temple of Fiends is not the most intuitive thing in the world on purpose. Like, when you're playing casually, this place is supposed to be a little bit of a maze at first.
And AvosRuin has made it through all the packs and encounters, made it down to the first Fiend refight, just going swinging hard at Lich 2, 2 swings for the mid-hundreds, everything hitting, so we've done about 600 damage, and Lich casts fast on himself.
Okay, well that means that this is a comparatively tough Lich. Not very accurate though, because even with fast, getting only one hit. And behold the Dingwu strats!
Yep, you gotta love those dang strats. AvosRuin, Lich 1 didn't want his cake, but Lich 2 is like, you're gonna sit down at that table, young man, and you're not leaving until you eat your cake.
Yep.
Meanwhile, Zyrak is making his way through all of these packs, about to enter the Earth floor, and so is about a 4.5 behind Avos. Hits a good hero run here.
Yep, and I think even starting to hit some of the same encounter table, because Avos also ran into these green Medusas as his first encounter on this floor.
Oh no, these two are definitely on different
yeah,
encounter tables.
and then it's a Saria into the rock goals. Yeah, no, this is a fair bit different. And it turns out that carry was blink and you miss it. That was nothing at all, and Avos is onto the water floor and is running into a whole bunch of sharks and big ol' eyeballs.
Yeah, this is great experience when you want it, but the more monsters you get in these encounters, the worse it is for you, because they're even if you get away or blow through them, if they're gonna move first, they're gonna get their actions in. All of that stuff is gonna add up to our margin of victory here. With about a 1.5 minute difference entering Temple of Fiends.
Yep, the difference between our runners can be measured in under 100 seconds probably.
Oh yeah, I just checked with our tracker. It was 70 seconds, 1:10.
And now running into that dance lobster and this sea troll with sleep. neither of these things are anything that you want to see right now.
Oh, and Avos knowing this, you saw those swings go straight for the lobsters just to take them down.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's going to make it through without too much trouble. But we'll see if he runs into this pack again. So Zyrak using Fog 2 to great effect. His carry, took a few hundred points of damage. He swings again with a power bonk, 1194, and carry is just a smear on the road as we head down to the seafloor. So we are on the same floor.
Mm-hmm. These runners are right on the heels of each other as we enter Kraken 2. And we also haven't seen Warmech at all this seed, so we actually don't know how nasty Chaos and these upper two fiends could end up being, as Kraken leads off with a Fire 2, which I mentioned Avos is very happy to see because that means that Kraken is not reaching out and touching people.
Yeah, it gives you an extra round to get those white shirt charges up, to get those evades, so if you can dodge those tentacles, then they can't hurt you. And Zyrak just a step or two away from pulling Kraken 2 as well.
Yeah, our runners are high-fiving at this point. This is tense. This is anybody's race at this point.
Oh, and we get mineral nuke, but the fighter comes through for 472, knocks out Kraken 2.
This is a pretty invasive Kraken.
Steps back to the front of the party, and AvosRuin is down to one more fiend before he fights the big boss.
Mm-hmm. But running into these sleeping trolls and the dance lobster, and we'll see if this ends up playing a.
No, he swings and takes out the lobster right off the bat before the music gets going. Zyrak's having to heal up against Kraken. Using nukes again, hits with the fighter, so same follow-up nuke and then a little slash by the fighter gets you through Kraken 2 and on down to the air floor.
Yep. And our runner's pulling Tiamat at almost the same time. It's like what? Maybe 15 to 20 seconds separating these runners at this point? Got calls from chat to throw the Vorpal into the garbage bin. And yeah, the LCB, I love calling races like this, where our runners are like right on each other's heels. This is the sort of thing that you like to see.
Yeah, I mean, these guys are giving it their all. They are fighting tooth and nail to get into this last chance qualifier. It's reminding you the winner stays and gets to play again next week for a chance, while the loser is done for the year.
Yep. The loser of this match is going home, and so both of our runners are pretty much leaving everything they have on the screen right now. They are playing for all the marbles.
Yeah, Zyrak uses a temper and is going to slash his way through, while Avos uses some nukes to get through. We are within seconds, although Zyrak picks up an extra air encounter, slowing him down.
Mm-hmm.
The difference in those encounter tables really is in Avos' favor right now as he rearranges all of his gear and prepares to pull the final fiend.
Yes, indeed. And Zyrak running into the...
runs ahead.
Zyrak just going for it. Oh, and is in front of the door, now going to heal up a bit.
It was like, got past in the pits, and then Avos, pulled out first, and is the first to pull Chaos. Buffing up this fighter. We've got Fast, we've got Tempers, we've got Invis 2 cast, we've got a white shirt. I think that was Fast and not Temper.
That was Fast, and Avos is leading off with what is essentially a double Invis 2. Okay, and Chaos is not too dodgy or tanky right now.
Yeah, 4 hits for 231, not bad. Zyrak again using his signature Fog 2, and hits for about the same.
Okay, if I were Avos, I wouldn't be defensively buffing so much. Usually, against Chaos, 2 layers of invis is all you need.
You never know on Chaos, and you might as well use them early and keep those characters up. Zyrak using Wall, he's down to his
Fair.
tempers. Avos has finished buffing with that Black Mage. We got nukes going out. Nukes and tempers and fades.
The white mage goes down on Zyrak's side, and Zyrak gets it. Thanks to the double attack of the katana and the Masamune, Zyrak pulls off the win first and gets out right ahead of AvosRuin, and those are
Avos
official.
finishes right behind.
Yep, those are official SRL times of 157.27 for Zyrak and 157.45 for Avos. Literally separated by 18 seconds.
Yeah, Zyrak with that come from behind victory right at the end, was behind all the way through the Temple of Fiends Revisited, and just has a little bit more damage at the end, pulls it out. So GG's both our runners. What a finish, what a show.
Yeah, that was incredible. GG's to both Avos and Zyrak. They were giving it everything they had, and that put on a photo finish for us. That was incredible to watch. We will see about getting the 2 of them in here for an interview here in just a moment. But first, I think they probably need a moment to catch their breath.
Yeah, so we had 2 runners start off. These are both relatively new runners from what I remember, and fighting for their lives in this spring tournament. They run different directions. They had very different routing the whole game. They ran into different things, and ended up together in the Temple of Fiends, coming around at the same time. Zyrak pulls ahead at the very last, and we have Zyrak joining us here in the booth. GG's.
GG's.
Yeah, GG's, Zyrak. That was incredible to watch. Like, you were slightly behind for most of the Temple of Fiends and just crept forward bit by bit, and eventually your Knight and Ninja combination just barely managed to eke out the final win, about 10 seconds ahead of Avos. Were you like thinking about that sort of double melee offense from the very start with your composition, or did that just sort of evolve as you went through the seed?
Yeah, I try to keep my options open when I pick my party, which is kind of why I like this setup. I would have very gladly had the ninja get knocked off and just power level the fighter, but it just never really presented itself. Like, I checked a few early grind tiles and didn't really find anything that was any good. The only thing I found that was any good was that Badman tile, and I had no intention of healing anybody but the fighter there. But they just kept dying before before that was an issue.
Right.
Yeah, so I want to focus more on the other end of the race. So how did you feel going into the Temple of Fiends? Did you think you were ready, and were you expecting to be that close?
I knew it was probably going to be pretty close, yeah, because there's nothing really... Most of the loose items were in like the major concentrated checks. There wasn't anything that was super hidden. And I knew I've completely cleared out Earth Cave, which I figured was something my opponent probably didn't do. So I figured it, like, it, all likelihood, it had to be fairly close. Yeah, I was definitely pulling my hair out in Topher, being like, I'm getting all these unrunnables and like, you know, I'm at the part of my encounter cycle where I'm getting something every 2 steps. Like, this is Just get me to chaos.
Yeah, that bit on floor 1 as you were coming back down was absolutely brutal to watch, and I was like, oh, all of this, he might lose any hope of regaining a lead, but you did. And so it turns out that you actually you say that the checks were all a little bit straightforward. It turns out that Ice Cave was a bit of a mess that you never saw, because those wraiths had poison breath as something that they could very easily do first turn. They had damage poison, like
Right.
quite early in their AI cycle, and Avos got tripped up on that for like multiple dives. Like he actually almost got all the way through ice in a single dive at first, and then just got completely annihilated, and then tried multiple times over the course of the sea to get back in there before finding all those like ribbons and whatnot in the Flying Fortress complex.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's really unfortunate. That's unfortunate. That's just what happens in FF1 and Randomizer in my experience sometimes. So that is kind of unfortunate for him. I definitely felt like all this stuff that the seed gave you at the beginning wanted you in the outer sea, so that's why I went out there.
Yeah.
And paid off.
Yeah, and so Zyrek, we're gonna cut it a little bit short. So we do have another race ready to start behind us. So congratulations again! You finished the Swiss rounds of the spring tournament at 3-3. So you are entered in. You have your ticket to the last chance qualifier next week. So I hope we're gonna get to see you there.
Yeah, for sure. This is better than I ever would have thought I would have done when I joined up. So it's all just gravy from here. Just
yeah,
go
well,
for the gusto.
it's a lot of fun to watch that. I remember watching it last year. It's 15 or 20 racers all in one, all fighting for one shot to move up into the play-in race. But yeah, so congratulations again. Your season goes on for at least one more week, and we'll see how that goes. So, and do you have any final thoughts for us?
No, just a quick shout out, thank you to you guys and Randomania for all the restreaming, the commentating and stuff, and GG's to Avos. That's a close race, and I know that's probably heartbreaking for him, but I mean, that's GG's.
For sure. And now, with our race over, sports fans, don't touch that Twitch icon, because there is another race coming up immediately, and that is going to be Spellzap versus Hypes Nova on this very channel. And with that, this has been Space Drake, and I have been joined by MG Weirdo, Karant, and Dinglu, and we are going to hand you over to Darkmoon X and Sprocket Dance to get us into Spellzap versus Hypes.